Okay. Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers, media, reps. Welcome to all of you. I declare this meeting open. And at this stage, I'd like to introduce, we have two visitors from Haiyan County, which is part of the Zhejiang city area, Mr. Brian Chen and Mr. Peter Dong. Welcome, gentlemen. Nice to have you here. Under announcements, councillors, we had the draw for the early payment of rates, and the first prize winner is Mr. Dominic Palazzi, who receives a $2,000 account from the Commonwealth Bank, and Mr. Brett Norrie was the second prize winner, who receives a family membership to the Southwest Sports Centre. Neither of those gentlemen were able to come along tonight, so we congratulate them and thank the Commonwealth Bank for their continued sponsorship of the Early Rates Incentive Program. Councillors, you would be aware, but I will mention it, we had a very unfortunate incident happen to some of our sporting fields in the last 24 hours, 48 hours or so, where we had contaminants contained within top dressing of mulch we sourced from the Bunbury Harvey Regional Council. And unfortunately, a lot of that mulch did contain plastics, stoneware and other contaminants which were applied to areas of Forest Park and Hay Park. Due credit to our staff and particular credit to our Acting Director of Works. He had 19 employees and machines there today trying to pick up the contaminants. Obviously, it's a real concern to us because of the playing fields. The playing fields have been signposted now unfit for use until we get those contaminants off, but I'm very concerned about it, and the CEO will be taking it up with the Bunbury Harvey Regional Council in due course. We have Councillor Cook is on leave of absence until tomorrow, and Councillor Giles, who had previously been granted leave of absence, is in fact here, so welcome to you, Councillor Giles. Declarations of interest. Councillors, do you have any interest to declare? Thank you. Public question time. We have questions submitted by Mr. Martin Howes. Is Mr. Howes present? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. The questions this evening: who is presently acting in the following positions at Council? A, the Director of Works and Services, including Engineering, Parks and Gardens. B, Manager of Major Projects. C, Director of Planning and Development. D, Communities, Arts and Sports. And E, Financial Manager. Second question is, has each of these persons been permanently appointed to these positions? And the third question is, if not, when does Council expect to make permanent appointments to these positions? And is Council concerned at the high turnover among senior positions at Council? And if so, what does Council intend to do to reduce that turnover? Perhaps including exercising the Mayor and Council's powers under Section 28, 537, 538, 539 and 550 of the Local Government Act 1995.
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to question one, currently Mr. Greg Galinsky is the Acting Director of Works and Services, Ms. Stephanie Addison-Brown is the Acting Director of Planning and Development and Regulatory Services, and Mr. John Cowell is the Acting Director of Corporate and Community Services. There's no other positions are classified as senior positions, and the CEO is responsible for the management of these. It'll just be left at that. Question two, has each of these positions been permanently appointed positions? The answer is no. Question three, the CEO KPI was for a reduction in senior positions, and Council has considered staff turnover and is comfortable with the current performance.
Thank you. Could I have someone confirm the minutes of the last meeting, please? Someone move. Councillor McCleary, seconder. Councillor Hayward, all in favour? It's carried unanimously, thank you. The minutes of the two council committees, Bunbury Roadwise and Audit Committee, someone move. Councillor Jones, Councillor McGwell, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Councillors, do we have any petitions tonight? I have a request, several requests for deputations. Jay Reynolds. Is Jay Reynolds in the audience? Yeah. Great. Mr Reynolds seeks leave to make a deputation in respect to item 10.2.9. Those who approve, please indicate. Those who don't, that's approved. Mr Reynolds, when the time comes, I'll invite you up. Joan Jenkins also seeks leave to speak on the same item. Those who support, please indicate. Those who don't, that's approved. And Mr Smith also seeks leave to speak on the same item. Those who approve, please indicate. Those who don't, that's approved. So when we get to that item, I'll invite you up. Councillors, dealing with the items tonight, coming out at this stage, 10.1.2. We need 2 elected members appointed to the working group. 10.2.1, Councillor Steele. 10.2.8, as we have to elect representatives to the various working groups. And 10.2.9. Are there any other items that councillors wish to pull out, please? Councillor Steck.
10.2.5, sir.
Any others? Can I have someone move the balance? Councillor Jones, Councillor Hayward, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to 10.2.1. Councillors, just to let you know that I am happy to go on to that working group, and Councillor Miguel has also indicated an interest. Is there anybody else that wishes to be considered? 2.1.2. What have we got up there? So, someone prepared to move 1, 2 and 3. Does anybody else wish to be considered for that working group besides myself and Councillor Miguel? Can I have somebody move? Councillor Miguel, you're moving 1, 2 and 3 with you and I as members of the group. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kelly? I'll put it. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.2.1, we're good now. Someone move the executive recommendation. Councillor McCleary, second to Councillor Jones. Councillor McCleary. Councillor McCleary, do you wish to speak? Councillor Jones. Councillor Steele, speaking against. Steele.
After investigation of what other councils do around our area and further afield, but the reason I'm asking is so we can be a more friendly and enticing for people that have care and responsibilities into this council, not just parents but people with care and responsibilities of elderly parents and people with disabilities. For example, I'll give you the 3, Busselton, Kalgoorlie and Mandurah. They meet twice a month. Busselton meet the 2nd and 4th Wednesday, Kalgoorlie the 1st and 2nd Monday, Mandurah the 2nd and 4th Tuesday, meaning that the months that have the 5 weeks, they get an extra week off. Those councils also have more time off over the Christmas holidays. They break right at the beginning of December and don't actually go back until after Australia Day, which we have 3 weeks there compared to their 6 weeks off, and this will be very beneficial for people with children, of course. I looked at Mandurah's meetings. They only meet once a month up there. But they're a bit different. They have their meetings. That's the councillors attend committee meetings, which is once a month as well. They also have the same amount of time off at Christmas time. So we are the ones that meet the most, which for people that do have care and responsibilities is actually a burden. I'm lucky that my children are looked after by their father, but if single mothers or single fathers don't have that option, so I think for us to be a more community-friendly council, I would say that we reject this and we either go for what they do and do a council meeting twice a month, or we at least consider having a break after our budget meeting, which are on top of our other meetings. And I think it was actually our mayor that said after our last budget meeting, when questioned by the South Western Times why was our meeting so light, was because we just had a busy section with budget meetings, so it might be a good time if we had the 2 weeks off following our budget meeting. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor McCleary. Close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that we've worked quite well, and we are a big council, and if people need to take time off, they can do it with leave or just have a day off absent. Thank you.
I'll put it all in favour. Those against? That's carried. Councillors Steele, Giles and McGuinness voted against. The rest voted for. We move to 10.2.5. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor Hayward, second it. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hayward.
I just think, again, the executive recommendation makes sense. We have a building that's important to our historic story here in Bunbury. We've talked about the desire to create a precinct in the area, and this building could play a significant role in that precinct. And so it makes sense for us to get our heads around what's involved, what it might cost, what the cost will be over the whole of life, those sort of things. So I think the executive recommendation is right. We should investigate and see what's going to happen. Thank you.
Kelly, did you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr Mayor, just briefly, look, the old Bunbury Post Office building is in the top 5 of our heritage buildings in the city, without a doubt. I think that this process that we're undertaking, which is the investigations into the options to acquire the building, doesn't necessarily we're going to spend a great mob of money on it. That is certainly for the purchase. I think that we need to investigate all of the options. I would prefer to get it vested in us or somehow procure it without killing the ratepayers, if I can use that as a euphemism, Mr Mayor. But certainly it's a very important building in context of our city, in context of its location and that old part of the city. And I think we're obliged to at least investigate those options. And when those options have been thoroughly canvassed by the CEO, working together with the state and obviously the National Trust, then we can make an informed decision as to how the building will remain where it is and play a part in that precinct. Thanks, Mr Mayor. So I ask councillors to support that executive recommendation. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor Stick.
Thank you, sir. Already we've passed tonight the asset management plan, and we clearly do not have enough money to look after the assets that we already have. Further on the agenda, we're looking at selling land to reduce debt. Again, why are we going down the path of securing another asset that we just cannot afford? CEO's time is valuable. We're paying for him to do the tasks that we set. If we pick up this is purely cost shifting from the state government to us. So I'm just saying, silly to go down the path to spend money we don't have.
Speaker 4, Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Bunbury needs to take responsibility for its heritage buildings. I believe this one is very important. In fact, we nearly lost it some years ago. So we need to bring it under our umbrella to ensure that someone else doesn't buy it and it gets bulldozed down. Not saying they would for the heritage, but never say never. I believe that. Also, it has the potential to earn its own way. And this is really important. I mean, it's bang in the middle of the city. And I can think of the courts, lawyers, restaurant, heaps of potential there for, yes, we will need to spend a little bit of money to get it upgraded. However, once we've done that, I believe it could almost, I won't say completely, because I don't know who will be going in there, but I think if we could lease it, it will stand and assist with paying its own way. We need to keep this important building. We don't have enough of these buildings in Bunbury. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is the Speaker against? Councillor Hayward? I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And we move to 10.2.8, councillors. I'll propose to do these items individually. Let's do with number one. Can I have someone move? But first of all, I know Councillor Kelly's interested. Is there anybody else interested in becoming part of the Heritage Advisory Group? Councillor Giles. Councillor Giles can remain seated. She's impaired in the feet tonight. Anybody else? Someone move that Councillors Kelly and Giles be appointed. Councillor McCleary, seconder. Councillor Jones, all in favour. That's carried. Executive recommendation 2, someone prepared to move that we increase the council representation from 1 to 3.
Mr Mayor, sorry, I have a question, please.
Thank you, Councillor Giles.
I apologise for not standing, but also I apologise for not being here last week, so this question may already have been asked.
Yep.
But why are we looking to increase that when on all other committees we are reducing? In fact, we are culling council committees and culling membership on committees. So why?
Yeah, the question was asked, and I'll let the CEO attempt to answer that one. I don't think our director's back from it.
Yes.
Our director's at a medical appointment, so.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Certainly the issue was raised. Some of the councillors who have been elected to council obviously were representatives on there before. To keep some of the continuity and everything else in that process, it was suggested we increase the numbers, but it was purely based on that. There was no sort of other rationale in there apart from that. So we're happy for council to make a decision on that. We just thought we'd provide the option.
So is someone prepared to move that we increase the councillor representation from 1 to 3, just to get this debate underway? Councillor Warnock, is there a seconder? Councillor McGuell. Does anybody wish to have debate on this? I'll just put... No? Yep, okay. Councillor Warnock, do you want to speak to it?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The group's been going for about 18 months and there's a really good spread of expertise amongst the current members. So I would like to see that continue. If it's not broken, why try and fix it? So I would strongly recommend that we do keep the status quo. It is working really well, and if Joel and I come off it, you'll lose the PR and events experience that I have, or you'll lose the arts experience that Joel has, and you may not get that replaced. So it's just a really good spread. Neither of us mind being on it and continuing to be on it, and we just want to keep up the good work that we've already started. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Warnock, just part of your training in council meetings, you refer to each other as councillors. I know it's difficult, but no, that's okay. I'll get picked up if I don't say something to you. Speaker against?
Thank you. And this is nothing against you two, but we as rights councillors actually can attend the meetings, so there's nothing actually stopping you attending the meetings. I just think that it actually looks a bit biased if we're increasing on this this group, when we, like Councillor Giles did already say, we are reducing our committee members, and I think it also opens the door to actually have other people on. There's nothing stopping the two councillors that were members to now go along as council representatives. You don't have a vote, but you can still have a say, and that is something as a councillor you can still have. So I'm sorry I can't support that. Thank you.
Speaker for. Councillor Warnock, do you wish to close? Okay, I'll put it all in favour of that increasing representation from 1 to 3, please indicate. Those against? That's carried. So, councillors, can I ask for nominations to go onto that committee, or that group? It's actually a working group. So, Councillor Warnock, Councillor McGuinness, Councillor Morris. Anybody else? Someone prepared to move that way? Councillor Hayward. Councillor Jones.
Can I ask a question? Does the number of community representatives stay the same? And I did ask this question in an email earlier. Do all our committees now spill, and do they have to reapply for their positions on committees? Because I think that happens after each council election.
Yeah, the next item, number 4, deals with the other members of this group, Councillor Steele. So I'll put it now that we appoint Councillors Warnock, McGuinness and Morris. All in favour? Those against? That's carried. Can I someone move number 4, endorse the ongoing appointment? Councillor McGuell, seconded Councillor Giles. Is this likely to be debated? Put it all in favour? Those against? That's carried. And number 5, someone move number 5, pretty straightforward. Councillor McCleary, seconder. Councillor McGuell, all in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we move to 10.2.9, the reason most of you are here tonight, and I invite Mr. Reynolds. Come forward to the lectern. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a little bit nervous so far. I might look down for most of my talk. It's not out of lack of respect, it's just because I'm nervous. I'd just like to raise 2 quick points. First I'll start off by telling you where I live. I live on Halsey Street on the other side of the big swamp to the lot in question. I don't think particularly quite close to the lot that we're talking about. But I'd just like to raise 2 points. My first point is that I believe that the sale of the lot, the social and environmental loss to the community far outweighs the financial gain made by the sale of the lot, or the rezoning, which will eventually lead to the sale of the lot. I've done a quick rough calc. Like if the council makes $500,000 from the sale of the lot, that will produce roughly 1/3% of the council's $76 million annual budget, which is a blip on the radar. So we'll lose our park forever for a tiny, portion of the budget, annual budget. And I'll lead on to my second point, and then link them both two together at the end. My second point is that Bunbury is a very active community. There's reasonably limited active spaces that we use there. In my immediate area, I think of 3 of the largest recreational areas in Bunbury is the Big Swamp, the inlet, and the actual the beachfront in Bunbury. If you go down there, this time on a beautiful day like this, any time of the week, there's hundreds of people utilising these spaces, and then there's only so many of these spaces that we have left. And my point is that for the small financial gain that the council budget makes, for the loss that we lose, it is a tiny strip, but it's part of the parklands that all of Bunbury uses. That's my point. Is that it's a huge loss for the small financial gain that we make. And Bunbury's a really active community. It's highly utilised space, and I just think it beggars belief that we should be doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joan Jenkins.
I've got another, I haven't made any effort, but another 40 people wanted to sign, which brings it up over 800 signatures. I'd say that I'm a health scientist, and I've lived and worked in Bunbury for over 50 years. I've performed considerable services for the community over those years, and been involved in a wide spectrum of activities and organisations, including many City of Bunbury committees and Friends of Big Swamp for over 20 years. Since retirement, I've been very fortunate to be able to study overseas and in Australia on many aspects of climate change with some of the best scientists that perform that practice. And I know very clearly that we shouldn't be cutting trees down. In fact, we should be planting as many as possible, given the current state of play on the planet. Our community has stood up and saved many things over many years, and all for very good reasons. And I'd like to point out that we have never, ever been wrong. Not ever. The very place where you're sitting and standing today was going to be bulldozed. We saved it and created the first gallery. We saved the adjoining park at the same time. Then our community action saved the silos, saved the inlet waterfront, saved the bird wildlife park, and the list goes on and on and on. Simply because people in community care and appreciate and are prepared to take a stand. A fact is that the most livable cities in the world are the most walkable. There's been several presentations in the room next door in recent times, all from experts in their fields, and we've invited them to inform us better how we can care and enhance our city and streetscapes. Two that I can note are Mike and Mandy Bamford, who are consulting ecologists on how we can better care for our wildlife in our reserves, which there's certainly a lot of problems there. Rodney Tolley of Walk 21 and an honorary research fellow at Staffordshire University states walking is the best practice to improve public health, and by improving and caring for our streetscapes, we encourage people to go out and walk and enjoy. Myself, I've just said that we've collected over 800 signatures. That was just myself and a handful of local residents, and we didn't really make much effort. I truly believe that if we'd have made a bit of effort, we could have doubled those numbers easily. This parkland's an important and pleasant part of the streetscape, and is the main entry statement to the Big Swamp area from the extensive northern suburbs right up to here. This place is utilised well. Earlier this year I was sitting on the seat just down from there and resting because I've lost a major lung and I don't move about all that well. It was around 6 p.m. and people kept walking through there, and there was little children on bicycles, there was someone on a gopher, there was runners, and there was about 20 people in less than 20 minutes, and just made me alerted to how many people use that entrance. And I've lived in this area, that particular area, for a very long time and observed, and I now back into the seasonal wetland, which I totally appreciate, and observe daily the amazing life forms in the area and the interplay of nature at first hand. And I very much enjoy meeting people that love and use and care the Big Swamp for this Big Swamp area, including the small extension of the park to Beach Road. At a meeting over at the Wildlife Park with the CEO a while back, there were a reasonable number of people there, and then every one of those people were totally opposed to losing that little bit of parkland. The feedback is that a lot of people are quite angry about the risk of losing this land. That's the feedback that I sensed. And I think that we would very much appreciate if the council could be and learn to listen in a more open and sensitive way to the voice of the community, as well as the expert scientists that you invite to educate all of us.
Ms. Jenkins, can you just summarise now or wind up?
Yep.
Thank you.
That's it, really. There's just a couple of things. The minimal amount of money that you get is sort of like something about 1% of the budget, I believe. And yeah, that's probably it. Thank you.
Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity of speaking. I don't think anyone at council needs to be reminded that this is the place, this is the time when council decisions are made. They're not made at any time prior to tonight, and the proper process for councillors is to consider everything that is said, including what is said tonight, in making the decision that they're going to make. What this is about is really the sale of this land. It's not about the rezoning, it's about the sale of this land. All past councils have agreed that the zoning of this land should be parks and recreation. All past councils have agreed not to sell this land. It could have been considered as part of the land sold as around Plaza Street. Council decided it wouldn't, it would stay in public ownership. Needless to say, I've always voted against the sale of any land in the Big Swamp area. The Big Swamp used to lap Spencer Street when I was a child. It's a regional waterway that deserves the protection that it has. And council over the years has really not been kind to it. It's dumped rubbish there, it's built new roads, it's encroached, so that gradually we've got a very small area that is preserved. As one of the submitters said tonight, part of this land is the entry statement to the swamp. It provides that attractive, firstly it provides the knowledge because you can see the sign from Beach Road. The proposal is, of course, you'll shift that sign down to Prince Philip Drive on the inside swamp, inside the footpath network. Won't be visible from Beach Road. All you will see from Beach Road is houses on either corner. Part of the proposal is it encroaches on the footpath. If you look at the plans that are attached tonight, you'll see the northwestern corner takes up the whole of the footpath area, so we're going to have to relocate that footpath and reconnect it to where it crosses Beach Road. We don't know, of course, whether it will remain as R15, nor do we know how many units will be sought to be built on it. That becomes at the development stage, but by that time, of course, the land will be in private ownership and the private considerations will apply and not the public interest considerations. There are too many public interest considerations in relation to this matter. Please understand, this has nothing to do with the so-called rules and the judicious way in which councillors are supposed to act in relation to planning. This is not an application by some stranger. This is an application by council to rezone the land. And like any other owner, council can choose at any time to withdraw its application from the rezoning. It's inevitable that if it is rezoned tonight, it's going to be sold. And to me, it's just another encroachment. Parks it's part of the parks because it's part of the Big Swamp precinct. It's recreation because of the number of people who walk around the Big Swamp to both enjoy the wildlife and to enjoy the recreation that it provides. It makes all of us stay healthy. From a planning perspective, of course, if you look at the owners of the adjoining properties in Chewett Street and in Prince Philip Drive, the 4 units in Prince Philip Drive and the single house in Chewett Street, instead of having the shady trees and the like as part of their aspect, they're going to have solid walls of some description. We don't know whether they're going to be 2-storey walls or 3-storey walls. I just think if you really value public consultation, look at the number of people who've commented on this and opposed it, and use the power that only you have to refuse this and to instruct the council staff to withdraw the idea of selling it. You can only sell it once, and as has been said, the benefit you obtain from selling it that once is not enough for the community to lose the benefit of it being parks and recreation as it is now.
someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor McCleary, is there a seconder? Councillor Hayward. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I put forward this executive recommendation. I respectfully acknowledge the petition submitted by the community, and I have researched, visited the area many times, and thought hard and long on this matter. The land is on high ground, on the residential side of Big Swamp, close to a busy road, and it would appear commercial development is being built on the other side of Stewart Street near it. The land was originally zoned residential and is a leftover from the original residential subdivision. This land is what I would refer to as a tag of land, deemed at the time to be too small to be of much use except to rezone it for parks and recreation reserve. It was not at any time linked to the Big Swamp area. When the transfer of this land was made to the city in 1970, they began to maintain it and have been mowing this block every 10 weeks or so for the past 45 years. Today, blocks are smaller, and we have the opportunity to revert this land back to its original zoning. If the land is sold, our beautiful Big Swamp area that is on the other side of Prince Philip Drive, going south all the way to the bird park and right along through Minnanup Road, will benefit from this sale. This little tag of high ground that has been sitting there for years has the potential to provide its neighbours, the Big Swamp area, all the creatures who live in it, the finance to enhance and develop their home. The city and the Friends of Big Swamp being their managers, of course. Remember the presentation we had delivered to us on the Big Swamp Development Concept Plan? I'm sure you appreciate the amount of money it is going to cost for this plan and the enormous advantages for fauna, flora and the whole Bunbury community by pushing on with this development. Councillors, we must take advantage of this opportunity. R15 on this block is acceptable by the residents of this area. There will still be a nature strip for pedestrians to walk on. Turn back the clock a tad. Allow the residential subdivision to be finalised. By doing so, you will be supporting a strong future for Big Swamp area. Thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. There has been a lot of and significant public comment against this recommendation, and I just want to thank everybody who personally has taken the time to make their views known. I think it's important as a council, if we choose to support this recommendation, that we do take the time to explain our reasons for supporting it so that the community can understand. I've read the objections, and they were based on a number of issues. They were put very passionately by a lot of community members, and certainly more than just the people who live immediately next door to this property. It certainly couldn't be said that this was a small neighbourhood that were complaining about a house being built next door. There was a wide range of people, and some of the people I know personally, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for their views. So given that, why would I be supporting that we move forward with this anyway? Well, I don't accept all of what has been presented to me through those petitions. I've been down and had a look myself, as I'm sure many of us have, and I travel past there many times every day. I don't accept that the development of these particular small pieces of land pose any risk to local wildlife. The land is not part of the Big Swamp Reserve, and the issues raised about traffic, pedestrian access and others, I believe, can all be managed. We made a decision some time ago as a council when we drove around in a bus to have a look at what land was available in Bunbury to develop our city, to provide more options for new people to come to town and build houses and call this place home. This was one parcel of many. The reason I'm supporting this is not because we're going to get a few bucks out of it. but because it creates another opportunity for more families to move and become part of Bunbury. And as we know, there are very limited spaces within Bunbury for people to live. We don't have the opportunities of wide land release as other shires because we're pretty well full. I believe that the Big Swamp area is a very beautiful place to live and to recreate. And I think it'll be an attractive place for some new families to come and build their homes and lives. I believe the development in this area will actually increase the amenity, and I don't accept Mr Smith's view that you wouldn't be able to see the sign or the entrance. If you stand on the road, you can very, very clearly see the Big Swamp from Beach Road. So I'd urge councillors to take the brave move and to support this motion. Thank you.
Those against, speaker against, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, Mayor and councillors, when we signed on for this job, we pledged to commit to better decision making and greater community participation in the decisions and affairs of the City of Bunbury. We also promised greater accountability to the community and more efficient and effective local government, which we do by consultation. And we've seen the results of that consultation, not only with the signatures that came to us, but the phone calls that we received and the people here who spoke tonight, and also the people who have turned up in the gallery. So we represent the interests of electors, ratepayers and residents of Bunbury, and provide leadership and guidance to that community. In all of that, we pledge to perform our duties in the best interests of the city. That's our city, and we do that by listening. Now, the important thing is that we have a set of values that make Bunbury a great place to live, and we're responsible for protecting those values. But as we all know, values are not just tar and cement, and they're not simply roads and footpaths or built infrastructure. And we all acknowledge here that values cannot just be measured in cold, hard cash. They also must be measured by their intrinsic worth, the actual value of a place or thing, as opposed to its market price or its book value. We're talking about intrinsic worth. In this case, the matter of Lot 21 or 89 Beach Road, it is self-evident from the overwhelming response to public consultation which we're dedicated to, that there is a higher value placed on this lot, a higher value. Principally, this value relates to amenity, the quality of being pleasant or attractive, the lot's agreeableness as a unique feature that contributes to the physical fabric of the Big Swamp precinct. It is, in short, an entry point and an important entry point. Lot 21 is part of the surroundings that are an integral portion of the amenity of Big Swamp. That's the bottom line, contributing to the physical and material pleasantness of the whole precinct. That's amenity. Councillors, the feature that is Lot 21 in its current state contributes to and increases the attractiveness and value of this unique geographic location. And this amenity is worth more than dollars and cents. The intrinsic worth of this space is a value that exists in itself for its own sake and in its own right, as it is. You cannot buy and sell intrinsic value of a place. You cannot buy and sell the intrinsic value of a place. You cannot replace amenity with money. By selling this little patch of dirt, this pleasant vista, that's the word for it, that welcomes you. It welcomes you, it greets you to a place that we all appreciate for its wholeness. You fundamentally detract from the place. We lose something that provides nuance and distinction to our community sense of place. And I say, don't do it. I don't accept all of the arguments that were put on the petition or by the people, but I do accept the most important thing. And the most important thing is that this amenity, this entry to Big Swamp, is what people value. It is the intrinsic value of this entrance that is worth much more than any dollars or any cents that you'll ever have. So I say, don't sell out on that value. That value is something that contributes to Bunbury, contributes to that area, and contributes to the city, our city, by virtue of its own quality. So I ask councillors not to support this motion, and I appreciate that the people care and appreciate this spot. So please do not support this it's for. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Speaker for Councillor Morris.
If someone came up to me and asked me if I would sign a petition to save Big Swamp, I'd sign it. No questions asked. But if they were to tell me that it is not part of Big Swamp and wanted me to sign it, I wouldn't. $500,000. As the first person that made a presentation, and I believe Mr. Lawrence, said $500,000 is just a drop in the bucket. It is, in terms of the total amount of our budget. But that $500,000 is going to be earmarked for the development of Big Swamp, for the master plan. Now, if we're taking a look in relation to the overall development of an area, and an area, as Councillor McCleary pointed out, was residential, but because at the time when it was first developed, the area was actually too small for residential. Times have changed. It's now suitable for residential for smaller blocks. Now, Ms. Jenkins pointed out, and very rightly, about global warming. We know the population of WA is increasing. Every time we place restrictions in development within the CBD and the area of Bunbury, what it's doing is it's literally forcing people to move further out of the city. By doing that, they have to travel to and from the city a further distance, using fossil fuels, causing global warming. There was an interesting statistic that I read today on the internet. 2 degrees Celsius increase in the global temperature of the Earth will require 280 million people around the world to resettle because of the rise of the oceans. Now that's the global. Let's take it local. If we turn around and we say no in relation to an area that was once residential, and we say no, we're putting pressure upon people to move further out of our city. I'm for the development of Big Swamp and the master plan. I'm in the working party. And I'd like to see that $500,000 earmarked in relation to an increase of the wildlife park, the wetland area, and the area that is in fact our Big Swamp. A sign can be moved, but receiving $500,000 in relation to a strip of land that was once residential has got a benefit that's for that park. And that's why I'm going to be supporting it.
Speaker against, Councillor Steele.
The global warming thing. Maybe we should get our state government to put up more public transport around, then we can all travel by public transport. But let's get back onto why we should save this land. With more and more land that we have within our city actually being subdivided, we are bringing more families into this city. And if you have a look around, I drove through Kerry Park on the way back from dropping my daughter off somewhere, and all the land that's being subdivided there, not a tree in sight in their back gardens. And I think we have to save this area. And as the gentleman first said, this blip of tiny little bit of money that we're going to receive for this, and I will not be held to ransom that it will be going to our Big Swamp. We should be just developing that anyway. Being held to ransom to say this $500,000 is going to go to that is just deplorable. We should be developing that and saving this land. And Councillor McCleary pointed out how big this is. Compared to Kings Park, that is nothing. We should be saving more of land around our city to have towards parks within that with our children and more people coming into our city. We should be having more greenery. I have really grave concerns too about the footpath. Across the road, the land that's being developed is so steep. There's no way the footpath could be going across the road there. We have children go to school every day there. Unlike Councillor Hayward, I actually live in that area, so I go to that area at a minimum of 4 times a day. The amount of children that are walking there, going to the park with their children on scooters, riding their bikes to school, not just to Bunbury Primary, but going across the road and going to South Bunbury and St Mary's, is a lot. That intersection is very, very dangerous. I'll be very sad if this land is lost because we are going to get a couple $1,000 a year rates. $500,000 will go towards our big swamp, which we should be budgeting for anyway and not relying on this sale of this land. I've reflected on this bit of land, and a couple of years ago we saved a piece of land in Cornell Crescent. I would prefer to revisit that land, which is actually in a residential street, in a cul-de-sac, that is a prime piece of land, just a block that's waiting to be developed on. And if I knew that this land was going to come up, I would have said, thank you very much, let's go and sell Cornell Crescent, because that land is flat as and it doesn't impact on anything. I really hope that you do not vote to sell this land. It is a prime intersection, like I said, busy, and as everyone else has said today, as well as a gentleman there, that it is our gateway to our big swamp, and I really hope that you do not vote for this.
Further speaker for Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My interest in the Big Swamp goes back to the early 1980s when I worked in the newsroom at the ABC, and a report by Dr Maurice Mulcahy referred to this, referred to the Big Swamp, and what that did was actually alerted the whole community to the nature of the Big Swamp and how it should be saved. It became part of the Red Book System 6 documentation, and we gradually grew to realise what the Big Swamp could mean to Bunbury. When I first got onto council, we had a councillor who was dead set to fill in the Big Swamp and plant roses. Now, I must recognise the efforts of Dr Bernard Bishop, Councillor Bishop at the time, who introduced the word environment to us and made us realise just how important the environment was, and we understand now his wisdom. But this particular piece of land is not part of the Big Swamp. It's peripheral too. The first speaker mentioned the social and environmental loss that would occur if this land was sold. In my council career, I read a document produced, in fact commissioned by the council. It was called the Mitchell-McCotter Report, and it indicated that there was something like 30% excess public open space in Bunbury. And you probably don't realise the extent of the public open space until such time as you get in an aircraft and have a look. It's really enormous. One of the greatest environmental disasters that ever beset this council was actually done because of the need to provide developable land for people who wanted to come and live in Bunbury. Now, that environmental disaster is now known as College Grove. Now, we had to do that. We had to overturn the 1903 Commonwealth designation of that area as a rifle range and do everything that needed to be done so that we could actually accommodate people who wanted to come and live in Bunbury. Now, this is only a very small piece of land, but it will, as Councillor Haywood said, it will provide a building block for somebody, for a family or maybe two families who want to come and live in Bunbury. It does not impede pedestrian traffic. I went for a bit of a drive around there and saw some of the building that's taken place in Bolton Street and Fielder Street, and I was just astounded that there was limitations on the pedestrian access in those areas. But this particular block of land doesn't suffer from that. It won't impede pedestrian traffic. So I'll certainly be voting in favour of the sale of this land.
Speaker against, Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When this issue first came to our attention, I must admit that I was in favour of selling this land. but I have been persuaded by different points of view and doing some research for myself. I'm not going to go over and over some of the things that have been said, but I just want to make a couple of points. Firstly, I am concerned about the traffic safety at that intersection. I think it is quite a tricky intersection, and I think that the vision and all of the narrowing where the path goes and all those sorts of things are going to make that more tricky for both traffic and pedestrian traffic. So I am concerned about that. And I know we have had a bit of a traffic report, but people living in units or whatever they turn out to be on that area are going to add to that, because they'll be coming out onto that road, backing out of their driveways and so on over that footpath. So I am concerned about the traffic and the safety there. Secondly, I take the point that was made earlier that we have other blocks very suitable for sale that are less contested, and I think we should be looking at those blocks first. I think there were many that we saw on that bus ride that Councillor Hayward referred to, and I think we had lots that were on the list for sale. So I don't think that this would be the top of the list for most people to sell first off. I think there are others that would be more suitable, that there would be very little, if any, opposition from any of the public or the community. So I don't think this one should be top of the list. I think also a point that I would really like to strongly make, there is nothing in this executive recommendation that means that this money will go to Big Swamp. There is nothing in this recommendation that says that. So we don't know when it will be sold, how much it will be sold for, but there is nothing here that says that that money will be earmarked for Big Swamp. So that is a concern to me as well. So I think we need to really think about that. I agree with Councillor Steele that we should be developing Big Swamp regardless. I think it is a community asset that we shouldn't have to sell land to develop Big Swamp. That should be part of our mandate to do that. And I think that's a really important thing to say. It's irrevocable. Once we do this, once we pass this recommendation, we can't go back. It's done. So I think it's really important for us to think about that, and the fact that there are other blocks that we can sell first. This can be revisited at another time if we think it's really important. All of those sorts of things. But once we do it, we can't go back on it. As people have said, this building, other places have been saved. The Big Swamp itself was saved by people being concerned about it. So I think this is, I think it's not clear-cut enough for us to vote to sell this piece of land. Thank you.
Speaker for Councillor Warnock.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've been down to the park in question and I've spoken to the local residents. I've also been down subsequently and had several visits down there. Now, the history of this is that it was gifted to the city in 1970 by a local couple, and in those days it was deemed too small for development compared to the surrounding land, so it was zoned park and recreation. 46 years later, our city has become more built up, and this land now fits in with current expectations for lot sizes and could fit 5 homes. Local residents are concerned about increases in traffic, and following a public meeting with the CEO, the proposed density was decreased from allowing 5 dwellings to 2 of 728 square metres each, which is a lower density than originally planned and lower than the density of the surrounding land. As such, I believe the increase to local traffic would only be minor. The Council's environmental officers have advised there are no environmental concerns. The land has been cleared and trees planted, and wildlife will not be solely reliant on the site due to the proximity of the Big Swamp. Residents may not know, but the city is facing a $50 million shortfall over the next 10 years, which is $5 million a year, in order to fix and maintain the assets that it's got. That's buildings, roads, stormwater drainage, footpaths, sporting facilities, playground equipment, and community buildings, everything that people in the community use every day. In order to address this shortfall and meet the community's expectations to provide adequate facilities, this council needs to take some action. This means the community has to pull together and make some hard decisions. The last thing that we all want is for rates to jump. By selling some of our land, we will help find the money to maintain assets that the whole community uses. Yes, this land is just $500,000, but it's a big step towards finding the $5 million a year we need to find to fix and maintain our kids' sporting facilities, footpaths, roads, playgrounds, community buildings, and even replace stormwater drains, some of which are not coping with the amount of water travelling through them. As such, I would support the executive recommendation. Thank you.
Further speaker against. Ladies and gentlemen, in this room, you will pay respect to the elected members here, or you will leave. It's simple. Councillor Steck speaking against.
Thank you,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Thank you, sir. I'm really disappointed that some councillors are not listening to their community. We were elected to represent the people of the community, and they're here in large numbers with over 800 signatures. How much louder can you ask the community to give you an indication of how to vote? The College Grove issue. This gallery was packed with people, absolutely packed. Council had to reverse its decision and listen to its community. And the list goes on and on. So I have an alternative motion, sir.
Further speaker 4. I'm going to be supporting this motion, this recommendation, for the very reasons that have been pointed out by those speakers who spoke in favour. I do not accept that this is an integral part of the Big Swamp. It is at the very least very, very marginal. It was, as has been pointed out, residential land gifted to the city in 1970. It's almost surrounded by residential development. We have lowered the R coding from R40, R30 down to R15. And if you have a look at the other density of the land along Chewett Street and the vicinity of there, some of the density is up to R40. So this is the lowest density that we can have in a normal residential area. There are other areas within our city which have got much lower, like the Stable subdivision has got R2.5, I think. But R15 in a normal urban area is the lowest density that we can achieve. So I'm supporting this recommendation, which is a town planning matter. I have let the debate drift on all sorts of topics tonight. I think that's healthy. But it is a town planning decision we're making tonight. When and if the state approves that rezoning, then it comes back to us to then make the decision to sell, and it comes back to us to make the decision what we do with the proceeds. But I'd be staggered if any elected member would not support the proceeds of any sale of that land going towards the Big Swamp. We haven't written that down, but I'd be staggered if anyone was to go against that. Is there a further speaker against? Councillor McCleary, close, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am absolutely delighted and I feel very proud to be part of this council tonight because we have debated well, we have listened to our community, and still we have to make decisions. We have to make decisions for the better of our whole community, not a small portion. The thing that I need to pick out for sure is what Councillor Giles said. The fact is that if we sell parks or recreational area, I believe it's a state government policy that we need to invest that money back into parks so we don't drift it off into something else. It does go back in there. So I want to reassure the councillors here and the people in the gallery that that money will be put into our parks and areas and it will be Big Swamp. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's carried. Against is Councillor McGuinness, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Giles, Councillor Steck and Councillor Steele. You're moving out.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make sure that the people who voted for that are recorded also?
Yeah.
Not against, but those who voted for it. Thank you.
Yeah, the rest, Liz, you'll get that. Ladies and gentlemen, please leave if you wish. I'll give a few minutes. Councillors, the request for leave of absence by Councillor McGuinness has been withdrawn. We don't have any further business, so I'm declaring the meeting closed at 6:34, and I thank you very much for the way you conducted tonight's debate. It was great. Thank you.